There's been a lot of discussion about gatekeeping recently. Not just gatekeeping itself, but what it is and how it's been exacerbated over the past few years. Many musicians have been making statements about gatekeeping in one form or another over recent years as it's become necessary. Now that cesspools like Twitter and specific subreddits have become plagued with stereotypical metal dorks trying to prove they are the biggest fan, heavy music has fallen down further in popularity because rock and metal are not gaining new fans like they used to. I feel gatekeeping is the biggest factor in that. Before we get too far, I want to make it clear as to what gatekeeping is, or at least for the sake of this discussion. I asked on my YouTube community page what people saw as gatekeeping. The dictionary definition of gatekeeping, the activity of controlling and usually limiting general access to something. The music definition of gatekeeping, when a person or persons actively keep someone from being a fan of a type of music or art form. This is done in a negative way to a newer fan with excuses such as not being a fan long enough, not knowing enough about the music, and a wide variety of other reasons. There were many responses, but this had the consensus overall as to how to refer to gatekeepers and what they are doing to others. As the years have gone on and as online discussion over music has evolved, one thing is for certain, that most gatekeeping is done behind the safety of a keyboard. Gatekeeping is not isolated to music, and it happens with movies, video games, comics, you name it. When talking about music though, it seems that gatekeeping has had the most detrimental effects on the bands and artists that said gatekeepers are trying to bravely protect. When you boil it down, gatekeepers are fans, to the point of truly being fanatical. No one can love what I do as much as I do, so I won't let you try. It's important to also address what is not gatekeeping. If two people are at a concert venue and start talking between sets about the group that just played, one of which liking the band and one of which hating it, the person who hated the previous performance is not gatekeeping if he's just listing off why he didn't like it. The person that loved it can still love it just fine, and the person that hated it can continue to dislike it and never listen to that band or artist again. It's not gatekeeping if you don't like a band or song. If the person who hated it started getting angry and insisting the person who loved it to never listen to that group again, that doesn't necessarily make that person a gatekeeper, it just makes them awful. Going back to the definition, gatekeeping is when someone doesn't allow a person to become a fan of a band or style of music that the gatekeeper already enjoys. If a person is not allowing anyone to be a fan of something and they don't like it either, that's a different type of gatekeeping, as it has so much to do with anger and they don't want anyone to enjoy something that they think is awful. The message and intention is what separates the two. That leads to a problem with people who identify proudly as gatekeepers. It happens much more than you'd think, and especially online. Last year I made a video called 10 Bands Metal Elitists Hate. I talked briefly about elitism and gatekeepers, and in the comments on this and other videos on the channel, you can find people who are proud about how gatekeeping has kept bands and artists to only a select few fans, and they don't want their favorite groups to get massive attention. It won't be the gatekeeper's little secret anymore. It also doesn't help that when online, when the neckbeards are comfortably behind a keyboard, they have few to no repercussions for their words. Generally speaking, gatekeepers can be as cruel and condescending as they want, without fear of comeuppance in the real world. In 2022 on Loudwire, there was an article about gatekeepers called Not Metal Enough, a psychological perspective on gatekeeping. It's written by Steve Byrne, a licensed psychologist and teacher. The link to the full post is in the video description. Byrne goes into great detail for reasons why people may gatekeep. Gatekeepers may be insecure, gatekeepers have poor social skills, and my personal strongest opinion on this, gatekeepers are desperate for attention for being the best example of a fan. And sometimes they just want attention in general. When you look at gatekeepers from an observational perspective, you can see it's not so much about protecting a band or genre, or refusing to allow new fans to enjoy the same thing because they haven't been around since the beginning, but it's much more about people who have their own issues and are desperate for attention, especially attention on how devoted and knowledgeable they are. Over the last few years, musicians and bands have started speaking out directly about gatekeeping and how bad it's become. One of the bigger examples was last year with Metallica being on Stranger Things and a massive amount of popularity surged from Master of Puppets. The Metallica purists and toxic masculinity showed up quite angry. It got to the point where the band put out a statement on social media saying, FYI, everyone is welcome in the Metallica family. Whether you've been a fan for 40 hours or 40 years, we all share a bond through music. All of you started at ground zero at one point in time. Keep in mind this is coming directly from Metallica, a group with a notorious fan base who get quite angry when a Metallica shirt is worn in public by someone who is young. We then get to when people go beyond gatekeeping in heavy music. Racist and homophobic speech from fringe rock and metal fans have increased dramatically over the past few years. Social media and the safety of typing filth from home is part of that, and it's making rock and metal have fewer fans and more toxicity within. Sam Carter of Architects spoke about this and gatekeeping in an interview with Guitar.com. sitcom. I am always hoping to spread more joy. I think the only reason why it's older white men mostly listening to this music is because metal has been gatekept for a long time by these people. Now, new people of color are coming to say that that's really not the way it should be. Rock is for everyone, and I'm gonna bring my people to the space and we are gonna vibe it out like we always do. Hopefully the old white dudes vibe it out too. For years, I wanted to wear a little bit of makeup, express myself and put on a show, but I didn't do it for ages because I was like, people are gonna take the piss out of me and I don't want that. And then they did. Not only were people horrible, they were using homophobic slurs as an insult. I felt like this scene when I was growing up and when I was in school was such an inclusive scene for the outcasts. How did it become this world where it's like, you can't do that if you're a woman. You can't do that if you're gay. There's a lot of gatekeeping around artistic freedom. It's awful to say, but if you are someone that thinks gatekeeping through bigotry does not happen, you either live in a bubble or you are actively lying. That's it. It feels like once a band gets so massive that they truly attract all types of fans, that's when gatekeeping becomes excessive and aggressive. Or at least over the last decade or so, it's become more apparent. That brings us to the question of how we should handle gatekeeping. There are many ways to handle someone that is doing it, both online and in real life. I used to think that gatekeepers were best handled when called out for their behavior. If you call it out publicly, then it points out who the problematic people are. The problem is that gatekeepers want that attention for being elite and knowing more than others and feeling like they are accomplishing something by making others feel inferior. That means the best way to handle gatekeepers is to ignore them. Gatekeepers want attention for what they are doing. Whether they are trying to be cruel or obnoxious about it is irrelevant. If you give them any type of attention for what they are doing, then the gatekeeper is in some way working. If you don't give gatekeepers attention, they cannot gatekeep. That's it. No matter how much they might cry and moan about others trying to be a fan. If no one is paying attention or giving them ears and eyes, the gatekeeping does nothing. They are worthless. No matter how loud and condescending it is, if it's not acknowledged, then they're wasting their time. You should also remember that you don't have to know every minimal detail and being a fan since the beginning, like gatekeepers. If they use their energy to try to keep someone from enjoying a band or artist and they don't get attention at all for it, then they have to go onto a subreddit or tweet thread that no one is reading anyway. Is this going to stop all gatekeeping across the board? Not at all. It's still going to happen. But with heavy music, this will show people that angrily defend their position on a band that their voice and opinion does not control others and cannot stop other people from liking something. You can like whatever you want in rock and metal. You don't have to pick a few bands and make sure everyone knows that that's what you are all about and that's it. Gatekeeping is not a personality trait no matter how much someone does it. And that can sound cruel and be difficult for some to do, but that's how you're going to take a lot of gatekeeping out of the conversation. The angrier and more protective these people get of not allowing others to like a band or genre, the more attention they are looking to get for it. If they receive nothing, they'll figure it out soon enough that it's not worth their time. For years on this channel, I've talked about bands I don't like, songs I can't stand, albums I think are overrated, but I have always held since the beginning for people to like what they like. I'm not going to lose sleep if someone likes something that I don't. I'm not going to lose sleep if someone doesn't like something that I love. That's okay. We're allowed to have different opinions. And that was a look at gatekeeping, what it is, and some things to do about it. Leave your thoughts on gatekeeping below, as this is a discussion that needs to be continued. Big thanks to Emperor Tigerstar, who drew up some gatekeeping images. He has an amazing YouTube channel on history and maps, as well as having good taste in music. Please check out his channel in the video description. Big thanks to my patrons, and special thanks to Chris Doman and Dom Noble. You can have a say in upcoming videos, get weekly new music playlists, and see videos early by supporting Rocked on Patreon and through a YouTube membership. Click the join button below or the link in the video description for more info on how you can help the channel. Please subscribe and ring the bell to get notified of upcoming videos, and you can keep up to date with Rocked on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Also, if you are the contrarian gatekeeper who watched this and is just leaving gatekeeping comments on here and you think gatekeeping helps, please just move on. You are making things worse for others, and I promise there is something better you can do with your time.